What's happening? Big C coming at you once again. Thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, por favor, please do, because it is only with your support that this channel will continue to grow. So I had a conversation with a viewer on how to go about setting up a versatile compact defense build. And for those who don't know, the VKS is modeled upon the actual AR-15 platform. We're going to be looking at something versatile for home defense / vehicle / travel. All those little applications where compact builds are very practical and very efficient. But first off, this isn't going to be one of those no stones unturned conversations. This isn't the end all be all of compact presentations. Now, of course, there will be viewers out there who have different viewpoints than mine, different configuration preferences than mine. That's perfectly okay. This isn't a build-off competition. As Master Lee famously put it, take in what you find useful, discard what you don't, and adapt what is uniquely your own. Now, I am paraphrasing, of course, but that's how I try to look at this. Something you will notice, if you haven't already, is that I'm typically not that guy who puts my $500 optics and $300 flashlights on my marker. Now, if this was a business for me, and that it was beneficial for me to throw Hollow Suns and Surefires and Steiner PQs on all my builds, trust me, I would absolutely do that. DK, for example, puts together some badass builds, premium grade equipment, Cerakoting, theme builds. However, DK and others like him have a surplus of markers and accessories, and most importantly, the notoriety to accomplish that. So this is my short-barreled VKS variant for this presentation, and I will get into the whys behind this as we go along. So first off, on any LL build, the first thing on your agenda should be performance. Although the VKS doesn't take much to achieve that on a functional level, it is imperative that you swap the heat core O-ring. You also want to address the firing bolt pin, specifically the screw, which people seem to be having issues with vibrating loose and snapping off. So you just need to drop a little Loctite thread locker on that. Lately, people have been polishing the ASA for smoother charging handle engagement. Ronin 337 has a great instructional video on how to do that. Highly recommended. But most importantly, I would suggest getting to know your marker, working on your own marker, performing the routine maintenance. Don't abuse your marker. But if you do these things, I'm positive you will have a reliable and capable self-defense tool. So on to my compact build VKS. For now, I still run the Grimberg 8-inch smoothbore barrel on this. Midwest Industries 4.5 handguard. But if you ever wanted to run this flush to barrel, as I have with this in the past, then simply go with a 6-inch length instead. Something that you guys need to consider with free-floating handguards, particularly slim, is that just like with traditional ARs, Mlok screws may contact your barrels. Sometimes the gas blocks on the real thing. Magpul does offer shortened Mlok screws to rectify this problem. Now, some people just file them down. I've done that in the past, but now you know. Moving along, Magpul hand grip, because I have bigger hands, and just like bigger feet, the rumors are true. Swapped the stock buffer plate for this Magpul QD buffer plate because I prefer running my slings from here on my compact builds. This is the factory Pepperball 13 CI tank. I want to get a little more in depth about this because I have taken this with me traveling out of town. I have ran around with this inside of my vehicles. My last security gig was during the initial COVID-19 panic, and we actually had a VKS with us to employ for crowd control if it would have came to that. It didn't, by the way. I did end up getting COVID as a result. But the gig itself went smooth. The VKS does have a 10-round magazine option alongside the factory issue 15 at the cost of additional length. As you can see, this looks like a fucking extendo, although you're only gaining 5 rounds with this. Now, obviously, this is a very simple build. Even my optic setup is nothing expensive, nothing extravagant, and we will get into that as well. But let's go back to the barrel for a second. Naturally, you get more velocity and distance running a stock length VKS barrel, which is around 15 inches or so with the stock bird cage installed. All right, so I ripped this one off my other VKS for visual comparison. Yes, I put this through hell. But you gotta understand, I am not interested in putting shots on at 150 feet as factory rated with this anyway. I'm primarily concerned with those 3 to 25 foot engagement spaces, which generally translates to what? Those are your average living spaces, your average level transitioning staircases, the short hallways inside of your home. I'm also talking about immediate perimeter engagements in your driveway, for example, the front porch, small retail or office spaces. I'm talking about immediate vehicle perimeter engagements, engaging a threat outside of your driver or outside of your passenger side window, again, sitting in your driveway or in traffic or waiting in that 50-car Chick-fil-A drive-through line, or even perhaps a close quarters gas station or Walmart parking lot altercation. I'm positive we've all experienced the fuckery Wally World has to offer. So distance shooting and distance generating velocity aren't particularly relevant for this application. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's talk about overall size, which is extremely relevant in some cases. This marker is roughly 15 inches from barrel to ASA. Literally about the size of the factory barrel all by itself, and still under 24 inches or 2 feet, in other words, even with the 13 CI tank installed, which makes this very easy to transport, very easy to maneuver with, easy to stash inside of a vehicle, particularly inside of vehicles where maneuverability is imperative. You could put this inside of a rucksack or a gym bag, or even pack it in your luggage. I could even stage this under my work desk. So versatility is a major benefit of these compact builds. As far as cosmetics and furniture goes, 3/4 of what we do in Less Lethal is going to be taken from traditional firearms. Some people prefer the minimalist approach. Others like to Gucci out, as we like to call it. Basically, I want everything centralized and orientated in the most ergonomic fashion possible. Not tons of random shit mounted all over the weapon. The most important external piece of EQ on any Less Lethal / alternative defense build, in my opinion, beyond your air source, is going to be your optic or laser dot or fixed sights. Unless, of course, you're into blind and hip firing, then have at it. But outside of the video game realm, you need to be able to reliably put shots on target, especially if that target has a heartbeat and presenting itself with bad intentions. Yes, you can have the highest jewels, the heaviest ammo, blah, blah, blah. But if you can't actually hit a motherfucker where it counts, areas that will potentially short circuit bodily function, solid areas where pepper ball breakage and effective chemical disbursement is highly likely, or at least more probable. Without that, everything else is pretty much null and void. Now, of course, from the 3 to 10 foot range, the necessity to get on your optic decreases. At that range, you might just need to get shots on, but accurately hitting someone in the face or in the groin, or let's say the floating ribs, even the clavicle area with pepper balls, this isn't as easy as some believe it will be under extreme stress or certain lighting conditions, especially with a target on the move or using concealment. So with this, I went with a Feyachi RSL 18 reflex laser combo. Now, I know a lot of people like the full size holographics in reflexes, as do I on certain builds. But personally, I have absolutely no problem getting on target with slimmer optics like these. Open sight picture, multi-reticle with both green and red dot options, which both have actual tactical applications. Believe it or not, it is not just whether you like green better than red thing. So one complaint I field a lot is with difficulty to aim through and find the reticle on slimmer types of optics. One mistake that a lot of people make is that you shouldn't be aiming one-eyed, okay, down these optics anyhow. Both eyes open, guys, both eyes open. So for me, any open lensed frame not having an enclosed shell actually grants me a ton of additional peripheral vision. The brightness is adjustable as well, so no issues with flush out from the torch or running this out in the sunlight, especially with the ability to adjust the reticle pattern as well. Super easy to zero. Actually, Feyachi holds up extremely well, even amidst traditional firearms recoil. However, the advantage of these launcher/markers is that they grant us a lot more stability leeway, meaning there's practically no external recoil shock being placed on our hardware or on the shooter to compensate for things like recoil or muzzle climb. Now, I do prefer push button and motion activated options. This one is a dial, but I can still manipulate this and move smoothly into that forward clamp or even from here straight down into a mag well brace if necessary. So definitely not a deal breaker. Moving on to the laser. So why do I choose to run both a laser and a reflex optic on this? Number one, I do find lasers to be an efficient option for manipulating certain angles and movement spaces, especially moving fast, right? Focused more on what's typically referred to as a violence of action. So a lot less concentrated aiming involved. You just kind of point the dot and shoot. Although I have found lasers aren't necessarily easier or faster once you become proficient with your optics or your fixed sights. The problem that I find with lasers is that typical laser dots also print and create stream signatures that can potentially give you away if you don't want to be seen. You see how noticeable that is on the weapon? Well, guess who's also attached to that weapon? Even if I don't have a weapon per se, if this laser is giving away the presence or position of whoever, I can adjust and adapt how I need to engage or evade or even try to escape the situation. And just in case any of you guys don't understand what I mean by stream signatures, so printing is this: the actual glow of the dot from your equipment. Even some reflex and holographic optics give off a faint glow from the housing if you're accustomed to noticing that shit. Now, streaming. Imagine seeing this dot, and I'm going to try to put this somewhere where you guys can see. Imagine seeing this dot on a wall or moving across a floorboard or across a reflective surface. And depending on environmental factors like dust or smoke or certain lighting or background conditions, this laser is going to literally create a visible beam or stream of light, i.e. stream signature. Being that these lasers aren't curvable, right? Then you also know that at least in most cases, the source of that dot has to be somewhere in line with that signature. And it also has to have a clear path of resistance to create that signature unobstructed. Now, why is this relevant, you ask? Because again, depending on who's identifying who, knowing or at least being able to make an educated guesstimation as to where that laser is coming from could either be advantageous or it could be detrimental. Even if I can't see the actual person, this is at least going to let me know there's a weapon at play. Now, of course, you have the option of running a high-end IR laser setup, especially if you're watching this from the perspective of setting up a real carbine. Plus, if I'm using this laser, most likely I've thrown stealth out of the window anyhow, because in a scenario where slower, more methodical tactics and stealthier movement needs to be employed, I'm typically going to be on this reflex optic or even a fixed sight, not my laser. Especially when we're talking room and transitional space clearing inside of our homes. You really don't want to go bursting into doorways and barreling down hallways and staircases with your Olight strobe blaring and your laser bouncing off every wall. However, there are methods to counter some of the fuckery when running a laser. Naturally, if you have a pressure pad attached to your laser, you can on and off at your discretion. Technically, I can even on and off from the push button. But you would be surprised how loud that click can be when you're trying to be quiet. Other thing, unless your push button is pressure sensitive, it's going to stick in whatever mode you're engaging. So I also use something we refer to as a peekaboo method, where I literally place my thumb over or in the pathway of the beam. Now you see me, now you don't. Now you see me, now you don't. And this is something you would employ pine corners or transitioning concealment, but not necessarily open spaces, because the stronger the laser, like this one, it will set your thumb aglow, as you can see, although not so bad with smaller lasers. But the moral of the story is you always want to be mindful of how that beam is printing from your weapon and how your beam is throwing out that stream. Understood? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm going to run this into a part 2. That was a lot of shit right there. Honestly, I didn't even plan to get into all of that. I've still got lighting and all kinds of stuff to get into. So yeah, part 2. I really hope you got something out of this today. But until next time, stay vigilant, stay ready, and I'll holler at you in a bit.